The South China Sea, SCS, has long been a focal point of international geopolitical tension. A region that holds vast economic and strategic importance, it has seen competing claims from various nations. At the heart of this dispute lies China's expansive territorial claims, which have been a source of friction with its neighbors, including Vietnam and the Philippines. As of late August 2024, both countries have taken significant steps to deepen their defense ties, signaling a potential shift in the regional dynamics surrounding the SCS. However, this recent development raises questions about its broader implications, given the complexity of the disputes and the strategic interests of the involved nations.
Đây cũng là dịp để chúng tôi, những cán bộ đại diện cho lực lượng cảnh sát biển Việt Nam,
stronger relationship at baka may apply din natin dun sa mga ibang bansang may mga claims sa atin.
The South China Sea, a body of water stretching from the southeastern coast of China to the northern shores of Borneo, holds immense strategic value. It is not only a critical maritime route through which an estimated $3 trillion worth of trade passes annually, but also a region believed to be rich in oil, natural gas, and fish stocks. The territorial disputes in the region primarily revolve around a set of islands, reefs, and shoals, with China making sweeping claims over most of the South China Sea, marked by its controversial 9-dash line. China's claims overlap with those of several Southeast Asian nations, including the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan. Despite international legal rulings, particularly the 2016 Permanent Court of Arbitration decision that invalidated China's claims, Beijing has continued to assert its presence through aggressive maritime actions and the militarization of artificial islands. This has, in turn, led to growing tensions with countries like Vietnam and the Philippines, both of whom have found themselves at the forefront of the dispute. In late August 2024, Vietnam's Defense Minister Phan Van Giang visited Manila to meet his Philippine counterpart, Gilberto Teodoro. This meeting culminated in the signing of letters of intent aimed at enhancing bilateral defense cooperation between the two nations, particularly in maritime security and disaster response. The agreement is seen as an effort to solidify ties amid growing Chinese assertiveness in the SCS. An official security agreement between the two nations is expected to be signed later in the year, marking a significant development in the evolving security architecture of Southeast Asia.
We had extensive and candid discussions on a variety of issues, from regional issues to global issues affecting the region, anchored on our view of how these issues would affect us and our response to these issues and phenomena based on a commitment to a rules-based international order firmly anchored on international law and UNCLOS.
However, experts suggest that at this stage, the deepening defense ties are more symbolic than substantive. While both nations share a common interest in resisting China's maritime ambitions, their approaches to the South China Sea dispute differ significantly. The decision to boost defense ties between Vietnam and the Philippines may be a symbolic gesture for now, but it reflects a deeper undercurrent of change in Southeast Asia's security landscape. For both countries, the territorial dispute with China is a critical issue that could shape their future foreign policy and defense strategies. Vietnam, which has a long-standing dispute with China, has traditionally sought to manage its differences with Beijing diplomatically. Since a 2011 agreement, both nations have made efforts to prevent further escalation in the South China Sea. Vietnam's approach has been characterized by a careful balance, bolstering its claims through land reclamation and fortification while maintaining a functional relationship with China. The Philippines, on the other hand, has had a more confrontational stance towards China, especially in recent years.
中方始终将越南作为 周边外交优先方向，支持越南坚持党的领导，走符合本国国情的社会主义道路，深入推进革新开放和社会主义现代化事业。100年前开展革命活动，同中国老一辈领导。
Tôi và ban lãnh đạo cấp cao Đảng, Nhà nước Việt Nam rất mong muốn cùng đồng chí Tổng Bí thư, Chủ tịch nước Trung Quốc Tập Cận Bình và ban lãnh đạo cấp cao Đảng, Nhà nước Trung Quốc không ngừng vun đắp truyền thống hữu nghị, tiếp tục làm sâu sắc và nâng tầm quan hệ đối tác hợp tác chiến lược toàn diện, xây dựng cộng đồng chia sẻ tương lai Việt Nam Trung Quốc.
The territorial dispute between Manila and Beijing has escalated, with both sides accusing the other of aggressive actions in disputed waters. For the Philippines, closer ties with Vietnam signal an attempt to build regional partnerships as a counterbalance to China's maritime assertiveness. According to Zachary Abuza, a professor at the National War College in Washington, this deepening relationship between the Philippines and Vietnam is a positive diplomatic step, though it may not immediately translate into significant military collaboration. The Philippines' limited maritime capabilities, combined with Vietnam's cautious approach to deploying its naval forces, means that both nations are still navigating how to turn diplomatic rhetoric into practical military cooperation. Nevertheless, Abuza notes that such engagements could encourage Vietnam to engage more actively in regional security dynamics, particularly in military exercises and deployments. The growing defense ties between the Philippines and Vietnam must be viewed within the broader context of China's influence in Southeast Asia. Beijing's strategy has long been to engage with claimant states on a bilateral basis, thereby preventing a unified regional response to its claims in the South China Sea. This approach has been largely successful, as the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, a regional bloc comprising 10 nations, has struggled to form a common stance on the issue. China has been adept at exploiting divisions within ASEAN, often leveraging economic and political influence to ensure that member states with close economic ties to Beijing, such as Cambodia and Laos, do not support a unified position on the South China Sea. This fragmentation has allowed China to deal with each claimant state individually, avoiding multilateral negotiations that could put it at a disadvantage. In this context, the recent Vietnam-Philippines defense agreement can be seen as a response to China's divide-and-conquer tactics. By strengthening their bilateral ties, both nations are signaling their intent to resist Chinese pressure and assert their claims more forcefully. As Abuza notes, the move towards minilateralism, small groups of nations cooperating on shared interests, may be the only viable way for Southeast Asian claimant states to push back against China's dominance.
We are very confident that this year's AFR, conducted alongside with second ASEAN multilateral Navy exercises of AMNEX, will further foster interoperability and cooperation among ASEAN member states in the conduct of responsible maritime security operations to protect our people and protect our rights.
US Warship 114, this is Chinese 164. You are crossing my bow. Fourthly, it's inferior majesty.
The United States has been a key player in the South China Sea dispute, particularly in its support for the Philippines. Under the Mutual Defense Treaty signed in 1951, Washington has pledged to defend the Philippines in the event of an armed attack, including in the South China Sea. This commitment has been reiterated multiple times, especially as tensions between the Philippines and China have escalated.
If any serviceman, Filipino serviceman, is killed by an attack from any foreign power, then that is time to invoke the Mutual Defense Treaty.
Any attack on Philippine aircraft, vessels, or armed forces in the South China Sea would invoke our Mutual Defense Treaty.
For the Philippines, its defense relationship with the U.S. remains a cornerstone of its security strategy. However, the deepening ties with Vietnam reflect a broader strategy of diversifying its defense partnerships. This is partly a recognition that the U.S. alone may not be able to fully counter China's influence in the region, and that regional cooperation is essential. Vietnam, too, has been seeking to strengthen its international partnerships. While maintaining a cautious approach to its relationship with China, Vietnam has been working to build stronger ties with nations both within and outside of ASEAN. Its defense ties with countries like the US, India, and Japan have grown in recent years as Hanoi seeks to enhance its military capabilities and secure its position in the South China Sea. While the recent agreement between Vietnam and the Philippines is an important step, the question remains whether this will lead to broader regional cooperation among Southeast Asian claimant states. As of now, ASEAN has been unable to present a unified front on the South China Sea, largely due to China's influence and the differing interests of its member states. However, there is potential for greater cooperation among like-minded nations within ASEAN. The South China Sea remains a critical issue for countries like Vietnam, the Philippines, and Malaysia, all of whom have seen their territorial claims challenged by China. Strengthening bilateral and multilateral defense ties, as Vietnam and the Philippines are now doing, could pave the way for a more coordinated regional response to China's maritime ambitions. In the long term, such cooperation may also extend beyond Southeast Asia. Japan, Australia, and India have all expressed concerns about China's actions in the South China Sea and have sought to build stronger security ties with Southeast Asian nations. The Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, Quad, which includes the US, Japan, India, and Australia, has also become more vocal on issues related to freedom of navigation and the rule of law in the South China Sea. The deepening defense ties between Vietnam and the Philippines represent a significant development in the ongoing geopolitical struggle over the South China Sea. While still largely symbolic, this move reflects the growing recognition among Southeast Asian nations that they must work together to counter China's assertiveness in the region. Whether this will lead to more substantive military cooperation remains to be seen, but it is clear that both nations are seeking to strengthen their positions amid rising tensions. China's strategy of dividing ASEAN and dealing with claimant states on a bilateral basis has been effective thus far, but the increasing cooperation between Vietnam and the Philippines could signal the emergence of new regional dynamics.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
With the U.S. continuing to back the Philippines and Vietnam seeking to build stronger defense partnerships, the future of the South China Sea dispute remains uncertain. However, what is clear is that the stakes are higher than ever, and the actions of regional powers in the coming years will shape the geopolitical landscape of Southeast Asia for decades to come. Thank you for tuning into our channel. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth analysis of global issues.